Nolan Barrett stepped into the jewelry store expecting to pick up a necklace for his sister's birthday, not to have his entire life flipped upside down by the woman behind the counter. He barely noticed the sparkling displays or the cool hush of the boutique as he walked in. What stopped him cold was the sound of her laugh, light, real, like it wasn't meant to be heard but escaped anyway. And then he saw her. She had her dark hair pulled up messily, a pencil stuck through it, and she was bent over a velvet tray, carefully arranging diamond earrings. She looked up. Their eyes met. "Hi," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Can I help you find something?" And just like that, Nolan forgot how to breathe. Yeah," he said, blinking. "Necklace, my sister. Birthday, I think," she smiled like she was used to flustering people. "Okay, let's start with gold or silver. Any idea what she usually wears?" He shook his head. "You're gonna have to guide me. I'm completely out of my depth here." She laughed again, God, that laugh, and stepped around the glass case. "Don't worry, I've got you." She handed him a tray of options, her fingers brushing lightly against his. Her name tag caught his eye. "Mara," he read aloud. She glanced up. "That's me, Mara Morgan," he smiled. "Nolan. Nice to meet you, Nolan." He didn't want to stop looking at her. She had this quiet confidence he couldn't place, and a warmth that made the expensive shop feel like home. Somehow, they ended up talking for 20 minutes. She asked about his sister, and he found himself telling her stories he hadn't thought about in years. He asked about the store, and she admitted she'd been managing it for 3 years since taking over for her retired aunt. "I'm just filling in today," she said, pushing a tray of sapphires toward him. "My salesgirl called out sick." "How lucky for me," Nolan said before he even realized it. Mara raised a brow, her lips twitching. "Is that your line?" He held up both hands. "No line, just surprised." "By what?" "That someone like you is working here. You don't seem like the type to sell diamonds to bored husbands," she laughed. "And what type is that?" "I don't know yet." "But I'm interested." She blinked, and for a second the room felt very still, then she cleared her throat. "So, this necklace, right?" He glanced down and randomly pointed. "That one?" She stared at him. "You didn't even look." "I trust your taste." "You haven't seen my taste," he smiled. "I've seen enough." She shook her head but wrapped the necklace anyway, her hands moving expertly. "That's a $7,000 piece." He just nodded. She paused. "I'm not trying to upsell you, I just assumed since you didn't check the tag." "I didn't need to." Her eyes flickered to his watch, then to the tailored coat he hadn't bothered to remove. "You're not exactly broke, are you?" He gave a half shrug. "I do all right." "Uh-huh," he leaned on the counter. "Have dinner with me." Mara stared at him like he'd just asked her to fly to the moon. "I don't even know you," she said. "You know, my sister's name is Bella. She loves books, and she once dyed her hair blue in college." "I know your name," your laugh, "and that you're the only reason I'm buying this necklace." She folded her arms. "That's not enough for a date." "Then give me the chance to tell you more." She hesitated. "Look, I'm not really in the market for I'm not asking for a lifetime," he interrupted. "Just one dinner." Mara studied him for a long time like she was trying to figure out if he was for real. Then she said, "Fine, one dinner," he grinned. "Tonight," she rolled her eyes. "I close at 7. I'll pick you up at 7:05, she blinked. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." As promised, Nolan returned at exactly 7:05. Mara was locking up the front door when his black car pulled to the curb. It wasn't just any car, it was a sleek, matte-finished luxury sedan that looked like it cost more than the building she worked in. Mara paused. "You brought a driver?" "Technically, I brought a car," Nolan said, stepping out and offering his hand. "The driver was a bonus." "You really do all right, huh?" He just smiled. The restaurant was a rooftop spot overlooking the city skyline. String lights crisscrossed above tables dressed in white linen. The maitre d' greeted Nolan by name and led them to a private corner with candles already lit. Mara looked around. "You don't mess around." He handed her a menu. "I don't do things halfway." "Especially not with you." She looked at him, surprised. "You just met me." "I know." He leaned forward, voice low. "But I haven't stopped thinking about you since I walked into that store." She tried to play it cool, but her blush gave her away. Dinner was effortless. They talked about everything: her dreams of opening her own boutique, his work in tech investments, her love for vintage movies, his obsession with cooking shows even though he couldn't boil pasta without setting off the fire alarm. They laughed so much the waiter forgot to refill their wine. Halfway through dessert, she said, "You're not like I expected." "How so?" "I figured you were another rich guy with an ego and a bank account, but you're kind and weirdly charming," he chuckled. "Weirdly," she grinned. "It's a compliment." "Mostly." He looked at her for a long time before saying, "I know this sounds crazy, but I feel like I've been waiting to meet you." Mara blinked, her smile faltering. "That is crazy." "Yeah," he leaned forward, "but it's also true." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she said, "Your trouble, Nolan Barrett," and he replied, dead serious, "Only if you walk away from me." She didn't walk away. When he dropped her off later, she stood on the sidewalk, key in hand, heart pounding. "I had a good time," she said. "I had the best time." He took her hand. "Let me see you again." She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay," he smiled. "Tomorrow," she laughed. "You don't waste time." "I'm not going to risk losing you." Mara looked at him, really looked at him, and something shifted in her chest. For the first time in a long time, she wanted to take that risk too. Mara didn't usually wake up smiling. The city outside her window was just beginning to stir, delivery trucks rumbling down narrow streets, a siren echoing in the distance, but her mind was elsewhere. She sat up slowly, pulling her knees to her chest, and stared at the chipped corner of her dresser, her thoughts still tangled in the night before. She hadn't meant to say yes to Nolan. And she definitely hadn't expected to enjoy herself so much that she'd forgotten to check the time until she was standing outside her apartment, wondering how on earth a single dinner could feel like something more. She reached for the notebook on her nightstand, flipping past pages of inventory numbers and fabric sketches until she reached a blank one. Without fully thinking, she wrote, "Nolan Barrett, trouble in a tailored coat." Then she closed the notebook and told herself to get a grip. At the shop, everything was quiet. The usual Tuesday lull. The delivery guy brought in a box of catalogs. A tourist couple wandered in and asked if they sold toe rings. Mara answered phones, adjusted displays, and tried not to glance at the door every time the bell jingled. It wasn't until nearly 3 that a single white box was delivered to the counter. No note. Just her name written in neat cursive on the ribbon. She opened it cautiously, half expecting something ridiculous. What she found instead was a book. Not just any book, an out-of-print collection of vintage jewelry design from a French artist she'd mentioned once in passing during dessert. She stared at it for a long moment, flipping through the delicate pages. Then she whispered to herself, "Okay, that's not normal." At exactly 5:30, the bell above the door rang again. He wasn't in a suit this time. Just a dark wool sweater, perfectly fitted, and jeans that somehow looked more expensive than anything she owned. "You really do find the rarest books," she said without looking up from her display case. "I have my ways," he replied, walking to the counter. Mara shut the case and turned to him. "So, is this your thing?" "What thing?" Showing up with thoughtful gifts and impeccable timing. "Only when I'm serious," she raised her brow. "And you're serious about what exactly?" He didn't hesitate. "You." That word settled between them like a stone dropped in water, small, heavy, and impossible to ignore. She crossed her arms. "You don't even know what I want. Then tell me. You've been on one date with me." Which was enough to know I want another. She exhaled. "You don't get that. People don't usually come into my life and make declarations like that." Nolan leaned on the counter, voice low. "Then maybe that's the problem." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked around him and pulled the door closed, flipping the sign to closed even though she had 30 minutes left. "Come on," she said. "We're going somewhere." He followed her without question. The subway ride was awkward. Mostly because Nolan clearly didn't know how to stand without looking wildly out of place. He held the metal pole like it was diseased and scanned the car with the suspicion of someone who'd only seen public transit in movies. You look like you're waiting to be mugged, she said. He glanced at her. I'm adjusting. To what reality? She laughed. This is my reality. Welcome. They got off in Brooklyn, near a row of shops with faded awnings and hand-painted signs. She led him into a narrow storefront with paneled walls and soft jazz playing from an old speaker. The shelves were stacked with antique brooches, dusty velvet boxes, and trays of tarnished silver. An older woman behind the counter looked up and grinned. Mara, sweetheart. You brought company. Mara leaned over the counter. Hey, June, just showing someone the good stuff. June winked. Back room's open. Nolan followed her past a beaded curtain into a dim, cluttered space filled with trays of forgotten treasures. You brought me to a pawn shop, he asked. She picked up a delicate Art Deco bracelet and turned it in her fingers. This is where I come when I want to remember why I started. He stepped closer, watching her examine the piece. Why did you start? Because I saw beauty in things people threw away. He didn't say anything at first. Then quietly, that's what you think of yourself, she blinked, caught off guard. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Mara set the bracelet down. Why are you really here, Nolan? Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. That sounds like obsession. He shook his head. It's not, it's clarity. She turned to face him. You live in a world where everything is polished and perfect. You don't know what it's like to fight for every inch. I don't live in a bubble, Mara. No, what's your rent? He hesitated. I own my place. Exactly. Nolan stepped closer. You think I can't understand you, but you never gave me the chance. I don't need saving. I never said you did. They stared at each other, the air between them sharp and charged. Then she said quietly, You don't know what you're doing. Maybe not, he admitted. But I know I'd rather mess up trying to be close to you than play it safe and walk away. For a second, she hated how much that line cracked something open in her. She turned away, ran her fingers along a tray of cameos and said, You're not getting another dinner, not yet. He nodded. Then what do I get? Coffee, at a diner, no candlelight, no skyline. When she glanced back at him, Tomorrow morning, 7, he blinked. 7, you said you wanted reality, welcome to it. She didn't wait for a response. Just walked back through the curtain, leaving him standing in the middle of a tiny room filled with forgotten things that suddenly felt like the most important place in the city. He grinned to himself. Then he followed her out. The diner was nearly empty when Mara walked in the next morning, the bell above the door jingling once before the door swung closed behind her. She paused just inside, eyes adjusting to the muted amber light and cracked leather booths. The scent of burnt coffee and fried potatoes hung heavy in the air. Nolan was already there. He sat in a corner booth by the window, a folded newspaper beside his elbow and an untouched mug of coffee in front of him. He wasn't wearing anything tailored today, just a simple navy sweater, sleeves pushed to his forearms and worn in sneakers that looked too clean to be old. You're early, she said, sliding into the booth across from him. So are you. I didn't want to give you the satisfaction of beating me. He let out a quiet laugh and pushed the second menu across the table. Pancakes or eggs? I haven't decided if I'm staying. You came all the way to Brooklyn before 7. I think you've already decided. Mara narrowed her eyes. You're still too confident. I'm just observant. He nodded toward her earrings, delicate studs shaped like tiny crescent moons. You weren't wearing those yesterday. She reached up instinctively, then dropped her hand. You really catalog everything, don't you? I pay attention to what matters. A waitress approached, her pen poised above a pad. Mara ordered black coffee and rye toast. Nolan asked for the same, with a plate of hash browns he had no real intention of eating. When the waitress walked away, Mara leaned back in her seat. Let's level, she said. Why are you really doing this? He tilted his head. Doing what? This whole pursuit thing? You don't know me. I know that something in me shifted when I met you. And I don't ignore that kind of thing. You make it sound so simple. It is. You think I'm just going to fall for you because you show up in nice cars and quote my earrings back to me? If I thought that, I'd have brought a nicer car. She stared at him, unimpressed. I don't do impulsive. Nolan rested his arms on the table. I don't believe that. You walked out of your store early yesterday and dragged me onto a subway. That's not someone who plays it safe. That was curiosity, not commitment. I'm not asking for a contract, Mara. I'm asking for time. The waitress returned with their drinks. Mara stirred hers slowly, the spoon clinking against the ceramic. I've had people come into my life and leave before the door even closed behind them, she said. I don't have patience for people who want the spark but not the fire. I don't scare easy. Maybe you should. He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time she saw something flicker behind his steady expression. Not doubt, not fear, something more vulnerable, something unpracticed. I've built a life that looks great on paper, Nolan said. But the truth is, I don't remember the last time someone asked me what I wanted before they asked what I owned. Mara didn't respond right away. She broke her toast into careful pieces, eyes fixed on her plate. And what is it you want? She asked finally. She laughed once, quiet and disbelieving. You don't even know what that means yet. Then help me figure it out. She glanced outside. A man in a delivery uniform jogged past the window, arms full of brown boxes. Morning traffic had started to pick up. You're not what I expected, she said. I get that a lot. No, I mean. She hesitated, choosing her words. You're not pretending to be someone. Most guys like you try to blend in or play it down. You don't. You show up exactly as you are. He lifted a shoulder. I don't have the energy for masks anymore. They ate in silence for a while, the quiet between them not uncomfortable but cautious, like they were both testing the weight of something fragile. When the check came, Nolan didn't reach for it immediately. Instead, he slid it toward her. Split it, she raised a brow. Is this a test? More like a gesture. I don't want to buy my way into anything. She nodded slowly, then reached into her bag. They each dropped a bill on the table. As they stepped outside, the sun had fully risen. The city was alive around them now, car horns, footsteps, the distant hum of a saxophone from a nearby street corner. Mara turned to him. Don't show up unannounced again, understood? And don't send any more gifts, even books, she gave him a pointed look. Noted, he said. She crossed her arms. So what now? I wait. For you, she studied him for a long moment, then said, if you're going to keep chasing me, you'd better be ready to keep up. I've been running my whole life, he said. But this is the first time I actually want to get caught. Her mouth opened slightly, then shut again. I'll see you when I see you, she said. I'll be looking forward to it. She turned and walked away, her steps steady. Nolan stayed standing on the curb, hands in his pockets, watching until she disappeared into the crowd. He didn't follow, not this time. 2 weeks passed before Mara saw Nolan again, not because he vanished, he hadn't. He called once, and when she didn't answer, he left a message that simply said he wouldn't push. After that, nothing. No unexpected visits, no extravagant deliveries. She thought it might feel like relief. It didn't. There was a quiet emptiness to her days now, like someone had turned the volume down on her life. She still opened the shop on time, rearranged displays, and greeted customers with her practiced warmth. But it all felt like she was playing a role she'd outgrown. It wasn't until a Thursday afternoon, while reviewing a custom order with a client, that her assistant, Talia, leaned through the office door. There's someone asking for you, she said. Mara glanced up. Tell them I'll be out in 10. Talia hesitated. It's not a customer. Mara stood slowly, her stomach turning before she even reached the front of the store. Nolan was standing just inside the entrance, holding something wrapped in brown paper. His coat was damp from the light rain outside, shoulders dusted with droplets. I know I said I'd wait, he said, voice calm, but I came because I have something I think you need to see. She folded her arms. You're not great at waiting. I'm worse at pretending I don't care when I do. She glanced at the package in his hands. What is that? Come with me and I'll show you. I'm working. Close early. She didn't answer for a moment. Then she turned to Talia and said, lock up at 5. You can take the rest of the afternoon. Talia blinked. You sure? Yeah, Mara said, already reaching for her coat. They didn't speak much in the car. Nolan drove this time. the city blurring past the windows as he took them out of Manhattan and across the bridge into a quieter neighborhood dotted with brownstones and tree-lined sidewalks. He pulled up in front of a 3-story brick building with ivy crawling up its side. "This used to be a design studio," he said. "Shut down last year. I bought the building 6 months ago for a project that never happened." She frowned. "You bought a building and just kept it empty?" "I didn't know what to do with it until now." He led her inside. The space was raw exposed beams, tall windows, floors scuffed from years of use. But the light was beautiful, streaming through the glass and catching in the dust suspended in the air. "What is this, Nolan?" He handed her the package. She unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a sketchbook. Not brand new, worn at the edges, the cover soft from time. She opened it and froze. Pages and pages of her own designs stared back at her, some old, some recent. All copied in her hand, some annotated, others half-formed. She looked up at him, confused. "I found it," he said. "At the antique store you took me to. June said you left it there years ago, said it wasn't worth keeping if you weren't going to follow through." Mara swallowed, fingers tightening on the book. "I thought I lost it." "You didn't," he said. "You just forgot it mattered." Her breath caught. "I don't want to buy your designs," he continued. "I don't want to fund your shop or write you a check. I want to give you this building. As your studio, no strings, no contracts, just yours." She stared at him, stunned. "You're serious?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because when I walked into your store, I thought I was looking for a gift, and then I met you, and I realized I was looking for something I didn't know I needed." Her eyes burned, but she refused to look away. "You can't just give someone a building, Nolan." "Why not?" "Because people don't do that. I'm not people." She let out a shaky breath and stepped toward the window, staring out at the quiet street below. "I don't want to be someone you rescue," she said. "You're not. You're someone I believe in." She turned, voice softer now. "What if I say yes and it scares me? What if I don't know how to make it work? Then I'll be here. Not to fix it. Just to remind you that you can." Silence settled between them, thick and full of everything they hadn't said. Then she closed the sketchbook, walked over to him, and said, "I haven't let anyone in, not really in years. I know. But you didn't turn away." "No." She hesitated, then reached up and touched his face, her fingers brushing the stubble along his jaw. "I didn't expect any of this," she whispered. "You think I did?" His voice cracked, quiet and raw. "I walked into that store looking for a necklace, and I found everything." She leaned in, kissed him slowly, deliberately, like she was finally choosing him with every part of herself. When they pulled apart, he smiled, not the polished, easy grin from their first night, but something realer, softer. "I want to build something with you," he said. "Not just this studio, a life." Mara closed her eyes for a beat, then nodded. "Then let's start." 6 months later, the studio opened its doors. Morgan & Co., a boutique design house specializing in custom pieces made with reclaimed stones and antique elements. Word spread fast. A feature in a major magazine, a waiting list stretching out through the next season. Clients who flew in just to sit with her for an hour. The front window bore her name in gold, but inside she kept the sketchbook on a shelf by her desk, open to the first design Nolan ever saw. He came by every afternoon, sometimes with lunch, sometimes just to sit in the corner and watch her work. He never interfered. He never needed to. On a breezy spring evening, he met her outside the shop, holding 2 cups of coffee and a small velvet box. She looked at it, then at him. "You already gave me everything," she said. He opened the box anyway. Inside wasn't a ring, it was the necklace she'd helped him choose all those months ago. The one meant for his sister. "I want you to have it," he said. "Not because it's expensive or beautiful or symbolic. I want you to have it because it was the first thing that connected us, and I don't want you to forget how this started." She took it from the box, hands steady now. "I won't," she said. "Not ever." Nolan leaned in, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "You're the best thing I never saw coming." And for the first time, Mara didn't feel like she was waiting for the other shoe to drop. She knew they'd already found what mattered. Together. The sky was the color of honeyed cream when Mara stepped outside the studio one morning, locking the door behind her with one hand and shielding her eyes from the sun with the other. The street was quiet, the hum of the city still gentle in the early hour. She was headed to a meeting with a metalsmith across town, a new collaboration Nolan had encouraged her to pursue, and for once, she felt completely steady in her own skin. As she rounded the corner, a familiar voice stopped her. "I thought I'd walk you." Nolan leaned against a black SUV, dressed casually in a soft gray Henley and dark trousers. His hair was slightly tousled like he hadn't rushed to fix it, and he held a paper bag in one hand. "I brought the good kwasas," he added. "Not the kind they pretend are fresh when they've been sitting under heat lamps." Mara raised an eyebrow as she approached. A man who knows the value of pastry is a dangerous thing. He handed her the bag as they began walking side by side. "You've been working non-stop." "I figured you wouldn't stop long enough to eat unless I intervened. I had a plan. You were going to skip breakfast." "I said I had a plan. I didn't say it was a good one." He glanced at her sideways. "You've been different lately." "Different how?" "Lighter. Like you're finally breathing with your whole chest." She looked ahead, her expression softening. "Maybe I am." They walked in silence for a moment as the city came alive around them. A street vendor was setting up a cart of flowers, their petals still damp from morning mist. A cyclist zipped past, trailing music from a speaker strapped to his backpack. "I went through my old journals last night," Mara said, her tone thoughtful. "I found a list I made years ago, things I wanted before I let life wear me down. One of them was to design a piece that made someone cry. Not because it was expensive or rare, just because it meant something." He slowed slightly. "Did you do it?" "I did, last week. A woman ordered a brooch to honor her grandmother. When I handed it to her, she cried and hugged me." "I almost cried too. That's everything?" "It is." They reached the corner where they'd have to part ways, at least for a few hours. Mara stopped and turned to face him, her eyes studying his. "You've been patient with me," she said. "More than I expected." "More than I deserved." "You deserved the space to grow," Nolan replied. "I just wanted to be here when you were ready." "I am ready," she said quietly. "For you, for us." A slow smile spread across his face. "That's good." "Because I was starting to run out of pastry-related surprises." She reached into the bag and pulled out a kwasa, tearing a piece off and popping it into her mouth. "Don't you dare stop." "I expect a rotating selection now." He leaned in and kissed her, the kind of kiss that didn't need to prove anything. It wasn't urgent or desperate. It was the kind that said they were exactly where they needed to be. When they separated, she touched his collar lightly. "Dinner tonight?" He nodded. "I'll cook." "I'm terrified." "You should be." She laughed as she walked away, glancing over her shoulder once before disappearing into the crowd. That evening, Mara arrived at Nolan's penthouse to the scent of garlic and something slightly burnt wafting through the air. "Whatever that is," she said as he opened the door, "you're brave for calling it dinner." He held up a wooden spoon, mock serious. "I was assured by the recipe that this would be foolproof." "Then you've clearly never cooked before." "Not without smoke alarms involved, no." She stepped inside, setting her bag down and glanced around. The lights were dimmed, candles flickering on the counter. A playlist hummed low in the background, something mellow and jazzy. "You did all this for me," he shrugged. "I wanted to celebrate." "Celebrate what?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, square envelope. "I know we said we'd take everything slowly. But I also know when something's right, so I bought us something." Mara took the envelope with careful fingers, her pulse quickening. She opened it and pulled out a pair of tickets. "Florence," she whispered, reading the destination. "You want to go to Italy?" "I want to take you to the birthplace of goldsmithing. The city where artists carved beauty out of nothing centuries before we were born. I thought maybe we could get inspired." She looked up at him, her eyes shining. "You're serious?" "I've never been more." She set the envelope on the counter and stepped into his arms. "Then yes, let's go, let's do all of it." He kissed her again, and this time it was different, deeper, more certain. Like two people who had stopped wondering and started choosing. Later, when they sat on the couch eating slightly overcooked pasta and drinking wine out of mismatched mugs, Mara leaned into him and asked, "Do you think this is what forever feels like?" He looked down at her, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "No," he said softly. "I think this is what the beginning of forever feels like." A year later, they stood in front of a restored stone villa overlooking rolling hills outside Florence. The air smelled of wild herbs and warm earth. Inside, on a long work table, sketches and stones were spread out beside 2 coffee mugs and a half-eaten croissant. They hadn't planned to stay forever. But when inspiration rooted itself so deeply it felt like home, they stopped looking for reasons to leave. Mara opened a letter that morning from a museum in New York asking to feature one of her pieces in a permanent collection. She smiled, tucked it into her drawer, and turned to see Nolan sketching something between sips of espresso. He looked up. "What?" She crossed the room, leaned down, and kissed him on the forehead. "Just thinking," she said. "About everything it took to get here." He pulled her into his lap, arms wrapping around her waist. "Every step worth it." They sat there, wrapped in light, in love, in a life they'd built from the quiet courage of choosing each other again and again, and they never stopped choosing.